Chapter 16, Leaving Melbourne for Good. The day I would leave Melbourne forever was finally here. The car was packed, I said my goodbyes to Elke and went off full of vigor and cheer, which got dampened pretty much immediately as I was stuck in Melbourne's rush hour traffic. I had to drive through the entire city to get to VIC Roads and Traffic Authority in the state of Victoria, to register the car with them, my last official business in the city. After being stuck amongst thousands of cars crawling slowly along for what seemed like an eternity, I finally made it. Now I had to park this monster of a car somehow. It was larger than any car I'd ever parked and the spaces seemed tiny. But that might just have been my imagination, or at this point my being nervous. Bathed in sweat and nerves, I went in, and the formalities were done quickly. It was time to pick up my travel companions. But I could not disengage the car's handbrake. It was stuck, just stuck, and it would not budge. Grudgingly, I asked a man for help. It felt so stereotypically wrong that I almost did not get over my pride and almost decided to abandon the car there and then. Back in crazy traffic, I noticed my fuel was so low that a gas station should really be my next destination. After another hour and a half of moving at snail's pace, I rolled into the first gas station I came across, where the car just stopped for lack of fuel. It had to be pushed the last few yards to the pump. I was lucky. It would have been worse to run completely out of fuel in the middle of traffic, so I saw this as a win. The morning seemed to go on forever. It was like Melbourne would not let me out of its grip easily. Once everyone was on board, we finally came to the city limits and drove out of Melbourne's reach. The views got wider, the roads quieter, the air fresher, and the spirits soared. We drove all day to create safe distance from Melbourne. All of us were anxious to get out of the city. By nightfall, we arrived at Lake Entrance and decided to camp there. My fellow travelers had tents. While they had to work hard to pitch them, I got comfortable in my newest possession, Malcolm the Falcon, feeling quite good about myself and my luxurious accommodations. But it stank of fuel. So bad that my mind was on overdrive, thinking, if I lay in this car for the next, say half a year, the fumes will gradually eat up all my brain cells. I'd be high the entire time, and in 6 months I would not even remember my own name. That was not what I had in mind. Paranoid about the loss of brain matter, I gathered my sleeping bag and plonked myself under a tree. As I heard the creepy crawlies around me, I envied those tents. Furthermore, it was getting a bit nippy. I could not sleep at all. I was cold and busy defending my sleeping bag against 4, 6, and 8-legged invaders. I was glad when the sun finally rose. The others were still tucked up in their cozy tents, so I decided to christen the camp stove and wake them with the smell of freshly brewed tea. The world looks better with a cuppa. Even a sleepless night can be cured with a steaming brew. Soon we all sat around the camp stove, smiling satisfied into our cups. To this day, I am astonished at how the world stops for a moment every time you wrap your hands around a cup of tea. Problems can be solved that way, if only everyone knew. We packed up camp soon after to drive further north in the direction of Sydney. On the way, we stopped at Cape Conran National Park and Mimosa Rocks National Park to explore just a little bit. The parks offered lonely beaches lined with rocks, undisturbed beauty. We should have stayed for a while, but we were all infected with travel fever. None of us wanted to stay still, so we traveled onwards. By nightfall, we were nowhere near a campground, so we drove blindly along empty roads in the middle of nowhere. We arrived at at Camp Congo in pitch-black darkness. The name sounded colorful, and we were curious to see what the next morning would hold for us. For now, we had to get the tents set up. A flashlight was something I should really invest in at the next shop, I decided. Eventually, we managed to make camp, and Meg let me share her tent with her. I had a wonderful, bug-free and warm night. The morning sun revealed the most stunning bush camp one can imagine. This place looked like straight out of Robinson Crusoe. Our tent stood amongst tall, lush trees. Behind us was jungle-like growth, but in front of us was a soft sandy beach with gigantic shells that we collected. The sea was dotted with sandbanks, and the whole scene was so tranquil that I wanted to be stranded here. But I was overruled by my travel companions, so we drove non-stop to Sydney.